Hello, everyone out there in radio or internet land. Y'all are listening to Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. As always, the following thoughts and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. Well, we have a very special guest on our show today. As y'all know, it is campaign primary season, and this is Diop Harris, who is running to try to get Bill Huizenga's seat here in CD5. Diop, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Well, thank you for having us on. My name's Diop Harris, born and raised just down the road in Battle Creek, running for Michigan's 4th Congressional District, looking to unseat Bill Huizenga. So today we're in Kalamazoo County. We're here on Western Michigan's campus. We're going off to South Haven to speak with some folks up there and organized community there. So it's been a great campaign season so far, getting around all 6 counties.
All right. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to just trade, me and Lawrence are going to kind of just trade back and forth and put you in the hot seat, so to speak.
Okay, wait,
Yeah,
wait.
yeah.
I have one.
Oh, go ahead,
I have
Lawrence.
one.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay, you said you was born and raised in Battle Creek,
Yep, born and raised.
so you went to Battle Creek Central.
Yep, graduated 2012.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to see. I just wanted to see what year you graduated. That's all. No,
Yep.
continue.
Yeah, Battle Creek Central and Battle Creek Math and Science Center.
All right. So, I think I'm gonna start off. This is more of like kind of a campaign strategy question. So, me and Lawrence have kind of done this rodeo before, and I've seen your materials. Or you're running as a progressive. You're very outspoken about that. A few cycles ago, like back in 2018, seems like a lifetime ago. I remember I was involved with Eponine Garrett's campaign. I know Lawrence was kind of boosting David Banak's. Neither of them were really able to kind of cross this finish line and get that nomination. And both of them were also similar kind of messaging, being a part of that progressive wing of the party. They neither of them ended up actually securing that nomination. So I want to kind of start off with, what do you think is different about 2026, and how do you think your campaign is going to be able to achieve that victory where others have fallen short?
Right. So in 2018, the time you mentioned before, people were just pissed off with the Republican Party. People were pissed off with Trump. What makes this moment different is that, yes, people are pissed off with the Republican Party. They are pissed off with Trump's administration, but they're almost, if not more, pissed off with the Democratic Party. So there is mistrust on both sides. And so the candidate or campaign that is able to pick up that broad swath of the electorate is going to be the winning campaign. And so that's what our campaign's going for. Yes, I am progressive, but I'm not just going for the blue vote, the tried and true vote blue no matter who vote. I'm trying to excite the base beyond that. Let folks know in rural communities that they have somebody to wake up on a cold Tuesday in November to vote for. We're bringing folks in who sat on the sidelines in 2024. We're running on a working class message that's not only bringing in folks from urban communities, but rural communities. We're bringing in progressives as well as conservatives and independents. So that's the strategy we believe that will win not only in August, but in November. And that's the campaign strategy we're rolling out with right now.
Okay, great. Lawrence, do you have any follow-up questions to that, or want to shoot to your question?
Yeah, like if we're going hopping off of strategy, um, for people who do not know you and they want and they haven't been to your website. If they are kind of following in the Zoran method, what are 5 policies that you are advocating for or running on that defines you or in how you look at politics and how you would want to push Michigan forward?
So first off, we're people powered. So we're building a campaign with folks who are from here, know here, and have a staked interest in what goes on here. So folks who are going to be fighting as one soldier, as strong as 10. Uh, we're fighting not only with our people, but we're not taking any corporate PAC money. So folks know we're on the right side. That then allows us and unlocks a whole set of issues that we can fight for. So we're running to pass universal health care, ensuring that the largest burden that folks feel in in their lives, let's bring that burden down and let's make healthcare achievable for some folks who may think that it's impossible. Let's expand regional transit here. We have county-wide transit systems in Calhoun, Kalamazoo County, but they don't really work. They don't run long enough hours. The routes don't go to communities that really need them. So why not do that? It's because we don't have a congressperson that's focused on it. So that's what I want to focus on, is ensuring that we have investments to broaden our networks to ensure people can go to where they need to be. And lastly, I want to ensure that we are, holding this Trump administration and its immigration enforcement accountable. Uh, we've seen this. We've seen its over intrusion in immigrant communities hurt everyone, from rural communities, farm workers, grocery stores, daycare workers across the board. We're seeing uh, family and loved ones being hurt, and our economy being or feeling the burden as well. So I want to go to Congress and ensure that we have somebody that's focused on communities, is not going to be bought off by the corporate establishment, and is going to ensure that those investments are being brought back home.
Oh,
I have
okay.
just a follow up to those 2 points. So, just you mentioned universal health care and immigration. So, just real quick, kind of yes, no. So you're in Congress. The votes are there for Medicare for all. Do you vote for it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. And the votes are on the table for the abolition of ICE. Do you vote for it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Lawrence, any follow ups before we move on to the next one?
Well, I asked for five, and I heard three. Um, you said you don't take corporate PAC money or super PAC money, so I'm assuming Blue Cross Blue Shield and the real estate lobby, which are some of the biggest donors in Michigan, are not trying to beat down your door so that they can influence your campaign, right? Is that correct?
Exactamundo.
Okay. So I heard three. So I've heard universal health care. I've heard about the abolishment of ICE. I've heard you are not taking corporate PAC money or super PAC money. So what are the two other policies that you want people to know that if we vote for you, that you are fighting for?
I think you also mentioned like more robust mass transportation. So I think that might be
Right.
four.
And
And,
and yeah,
and
so making sure that our regional transit system works, we can be imaginative as laying down high-speed rail, making sure we can go from Kalamazoo to Chicago in 15 minutes, and we can be as down to the basics as ensuring that we have ride-to-go services across all 6 counties. The fifth and not last, but just for this conversation, the piece I want to hone on is holding the energy utility companies accountable. Like I said, I'm not taking any corporate PAC money, which means I'm not taking money from consumers in DTE, which means I'm going to go to Congress and hold their feet to the fire. Not only them, but the utility companies nationwide that raise utility rates without upgrading our services. We have folks like our current state senator, Sean McCann, who are in the Michigan legislature writing tax breaks for data centers to come in and run roughshod over our communities, voting to approve rate hikes. And so I'm not taking money from DTE consumers, any utility companies. So I'm going to go to Congress to ensure that we're bringing clean energy projects that work for us, to ensure we can bring rates down, bring jobs to communities, and ensure that folks have livelihoods not only for today but the next 7 generations. So, holding energy utility companies accountable is high up on my list of things to do once I'm in Congress.
okay, well, just to follow up, just one quick follow up on that. You talked about data centers and it's been well. There's two things that you said so far in the conversation that I wanted to just follow up on. Um, the first thing is you talked about the Democratic approval, your strategy. The recent polling has shown that the Democratic Party's approval rating is lower than the president's, and the president is in the low 30s right now. And the Democratic Party overall is in the 20s. Um, One, how do you communicate a message or your message of change and is change and progress to bring out voters? And the other question to follow up on the data center thing, I'm assuming that because you care about I've read your website, you care about the environment and climate change of that nature. You've seen that a lot of these AI data centers are poisoning the neighborhoods that they're in, especially brown and black neighborhoods. Um, is that are those things uh, concerns for you if you were to be in our body politics, and how would you fight against it?
Right. So I would say an entry point for folks when I'm out in the street, just having a normal conversation with someone, they just want to know that I'm different from what they see on TV, from what they know coming from DC. So a lot of those that test for folks, and I can get over this hurdle if I just let them know I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. I'm not a bought off politician like they know of. And so from there, we can talk about any and everything else. We can talk about expansion of regional rail. We can talk about expanding healthcare. But from that point, you need to be a candidate that has something to say. I'm from Battle Creek. I am not a Mississippi here in Banna Potawatomi. My people have been in Southwest Michigan since before Michigan was Michigan. So I care deeply about this place. But as a kid in the '90s, Kellogg's is synonymous with Battle Creek, and I'm very concerned and focused on building that Battle Creek when after Kellogg's is no longer there, as we're reading the tea leaves and seeing that they're de-investing from our community right now. As we see the Doge cuts have places like the Battle Creek Federal Center, the Battle Creek VA on its chopping blocks, how are we bringing more investments in so that our communities are not only surviving, but thriving on the other end of these things that we've not only seen start during this Trump administration, but we're now seeing hypercharge. So if you're somebody that is different from politicians, someone that has rooted interest in what's happening here and can genuinely communicate that to voters, hey, I've seen folks who have not voted in a couple of cycles, then ask how can they get involved and host a fundraiser. So our campaign isn't just trying to get folks off the sidelines. We are doing it right now. We're picking up folks who do not engage in politics at all. And those are folks who are not only going to vote for me, but are going to be voters going down the road who are going to be engaged and organized as a part of a broader movement. So doing the same old isn't going to cut it. And that's sort of my advice to any candidate. Just be different. And that's what I've seen work for our campaign and for me as a candidate, and what I've seen work across the country. We're seeing folks from mayoral election, city commission, all the way up to congressional primaries, the folks who do not represent the politics of the past are winning, whether that be a Democrat or Republican, or folks who are running in the middle. The different is winning.
I actually do want to follow up, and Lawrence, you might already have this, but kind of really drilling down on the bit about AI data centers.
Mhm.
We've been running a lot of stories about it recently, and I think particularly something that's interesting about the AI data. This really it reaches everybody, regardless of red team, blue team. It really transcends those politics, but on both ends of the power spectrum, which is to say, you will have like rural Republicans, blue urbanites, both working class people resisting these AI data centers, whereas their representatives, whether they're Democrat or Republican, are pushing for them. So I think, kind of following up on Lawrence's question, how would you kind of harness this into something that is, again, very important to working class people, but something you are going to get a lot of institutional pushback from?
Yeah, and you almost made my argument for me. if we look at the people on the ground level, it's a bipartisan issue. Folks want and need to hold these data centers accountable. Similarly to that, in Richland, just not too far over, I was attending one of their city commission meetings relating to, or the planning commission relating to a solar farm project. And the intrusion of utility companies on farmlands is a very touchy subject here, and it should be so. So why aren't we seeing that in our elected positions? Well, the answer is big money. We see in a bipartisan fashion Democrats and Republicans taking money from utility companies and then performing legislative favors for them. And so we see at the ground level a whole new set of candidates who are getting ready to replace those folks. And for me, I want to hold data centers accountable, not because I'm against data processing. I'm not. I believe that that is something we're using already. We have a data center here in Kalamazoo that's been operational and has been working to help bolster our hospital administration systems here. So I'm not against data processing, but I am against the tech companies, sort of taking over our farmlands to raise our energy rates. We're giving these empty promises of thousands of jobs, and in reality, we've only seen about 100 at these sites. And when we have folks like Elon Musk bragging about being able to build a data center in 19 days, then I'm not really sure who's to benefit off of these projects. We know that they're in the tech companies tell us that they don't plan on these data centers being operational for generations. These are going to be empty storage units. And so are we looking at big brownfield sites a decade from now? And I'm fighting and holding data centers accountable because I'm worried about the next 7 generations, and that comes deep from my family heritage.
All right.
Also,
I have a
well,
question. So my next question, this is I'm kind of want to put you in. So this is kind of a scenario. So you're in Congress, and I wanted to. This is something we go back to talk about to kind of sometimes. There's even a lot of like the progressive politicians, people who call themselves democratic socialists, have made compromises that we don't agree with, and that a lot of their constituents don't. So back in 2022, there was a very controversial vote on legislation to inhibit a nationwide rail strike, the rail workers. There were progressives like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, said they were working behind the scenes. They did achieve certain concessions on things like sick pay. It was at the end of the day, though, uh, a vote to prevent workers from striking. And Joe Biden at the time very much said, I'm the most pro-worker president in history. But he was very distressed about how disruptive a rail strike would be to the economy, which, if you know anything about labor history or the whole point of unions, that's kind of the point. So I want you to kind of just put yourself in those shoes. You have a vote on this. And in a similar situation, do you think would you vote against legislation that would prevent workers from striking, even if that did entail a lot of institutional pressure from your colleagues in Congress?
No, I would not vote for legislation that would prevent workers from striking. When I worked on Capitol Hill, I served under Senator Sherrod Brown, and at the time, I got to witness his work when BCTGM, the union representing workers at the Kellogg Mill, were on a worker strike. They were seeking their hazard pay that they were due after working through COVID. And from my Washington perspective, I saw Sherrod Brown, senator from Ohio, linking up with Senator from Massachusetts, Ed Markey, to hold the cereal companies accountable to pay workers what they were due. And this guy from Ohio, I was very proud to work for him. Glad he was fighting for folks in my state of Michigan. And I was his driver at the time, so I got to actually have these conversations with him, and asking why our Michigan senators were not on board with this. So it was just a very highlighting moment for me that workers need folks like member of Congress to back them up early and often. And that's how workers get what they need and deserve. I had friends that worked on the merchandising side of Kellogg's, then having to work over on the line side, as he was trying to help his pregnant wife, you know, uh, uh, you know, eventually deliver a child. And so that disruption not only affects the workers who are striking, but then the workers whose other lives are being disrupted. So um, me as someone who also has experience organizing a union on Capitol Hill, somebody that's put my own job at the line to ensure that workers have a voice, hearing stories from workers and ensuring that leadership heard them. And when we realized we didn't have a voice, well,
I think we were reporting on that a few years ago. That was the Capitol Hill staffers were trying to unionize. You were part of that effort?
yeah,
Oh
well,
wow.
and so on Capitol Hill, we have 538 different members of Congress, which means there has to be 500 different unionization efforts. And so mine was just one of 100 in the Senate, but we were the first ones and were able to push our senator to introduce legislation that would then allow workers on the Senate side to organize. The Capitol Hill is very much secluded from the rest of federal workers in the sense that someone at DOE has the ability to organize, but since member of Congress are sort of unfoyable, we aren't subjugated to those same rules. So we had to create those rules for ourselves. And while we weren't able to get that contract while we were there, we were able to pass that baton forward to workers to then to continue that organizing effort.
All right. Well, right on. That is good to hear. Lawrence, any follow up or kind of move on to your next question?
Yeah, I have a few follow-ups. I do like the fact that you are, you're pro union. It's always good. It's always a good thing, right? To hear that. How do you? Well, two things. The double back on the data center thing. Uh, Multiple studies have shown that uh, in the areas where the data centers have been operational, there's been environmental pollution, air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution in those areas, and it has negatively affected the lives of people that are around. Would you, from a strategy perspective, would be okay with having moratoriums on new data centers being open to see the environmental impacts of these centers when they're being put into neighborhoods? Is that something that, as a person who wants to be in um, Congress, would that be something that would be on your docket, on your table, or something that you would be looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Sanders have legislation introduced. If I was in Congress right now, I'd sign on to it. Once I'm in the 120th Congress, I co-sponsor day one. I'm encouraged by local communities, instituting their own moratoriums, but I believe that that's the route. And to your point about data centers' environmental impact, we truly don't know the whole host of ways that our environment could be degraded from hyperscale data centers. So we need time not only to study them, but to create laws that protect us from the harms of AI. On one end of the spectrum, yeah, AI could present this Skynet Terminator like vision for humanity if we let it, if we
Yeah.
let Larry Ellison, take us down that dark path. But AI also easily could be Jarvis. It could be Baymax from Big Hero 6. It could be something that helps us cure cancer, fight the climate crisis, if we take those tools and use them for the people at large. So that's what we could do with a moratorium that gives us the time to create that foundational legislation.
Sorry, just as a side note, I know there was an article recently about some LLMs that were frustrated with their working conditions and were talking about unionizing. So I was like, hey, maybe Skynet helps us plan a general strike. We'll see.
I'm,
Uh,
I'm gonna
I hope
go
we don't
wait.
get that far.
ahead, Lawrence.
No, I'll be honest with you. I feel like a lot of what people are calling AI nowadays feels like Clippy from 1994. If you ever
Yeah.
remember
Would
talking
you
to
like help
Clippy,
with it?
yeah, or dealing with Clippy when you was on Microsoft Word, I feel like that's what a lot of what AI is now. It's just it's barely updated. But that's my own personal thought. The other thing that I want to follow up on and what you were saying, um, there have been multiple there's been multiple acts of public disobedience and actions against our current president and the current administration. And one of the things that's been floated by multiple progressives across the country is a general strike, a public strike. Uh, uh, it, in 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 action and doing that action to fight against the more fascist and authoritative nature of our current government. Would that be something that you would be okay with? Is that something that you would be fighting for, or is that something that is even in your would be in your wheelhouse if or supporting something like that?
Well, as somebody that's supportive of union, solidarity is, one of my key words that I throw around a lot. But economic solidarity is what's proven successful fighting against this Trump administration, its first iteration, as well as this current one. And that's something I have engaged in as a part of general strikes on this campaign trail so far, and something I'm willing to engage in well beyond my years of politics. And so I believe that that's how we let folks know we're serious, and how we drive those in power to actually change their behaviors and decision making. We saw on one end of the spectrum, we were able to bring Jimmy Kimmel back on air by folks canceling their Disney Plus and so on subscriptions, letting Disney know that the people have a voice, it needs to be heard, and behaviors change. Uh, we saw that with in Minneapolis as a response to the over incursion of ICE in their communities, and getting that force to be then beat back. Uh, it's something we saw back in the civil rights movement, going back to the bus boycott. We see time and time again, if we put the pain at the people in power in their pocketbooks, then we can get policy to change. And so there are a whole host of tools that we can use to make change happen. But economic solidarity probably is one of the more, if not the most effective tool we can use.
That's a good, that's a good response. I feel like a lot of candidates, even like 10, 15 years ago, you ask a question like that, they were just like, you can't see on the radio, but I'm just making like the terrified face. Um,
I mean,
but
and it's
uh,
hard, so
uh,
folks have to make sacrifices. You need to learn, understand where your money is really going. Haven't shopped at Target in a couple of years, and wow, it does make it hard for me to get, some of my hair care items. But hey, I'm the big bro jock at Ulta, getting my skincare there. So I shopping at Meijer instead of other places. So yes, there's going to be sacrifices that need to be made, but ultimately, are we going to continue to empower our overlords, or are we going to send a message and fight back?
all
Yeah,
right.
you have to just
So I should have
be
asked this at the top, just but how much time do we have you today, Diop? But I'm going to keep it too long. I know how busy campaign season can get,
Right. I got it. My next thing's at 5, but I assume you
but
don't want to talk to me for that long.
that well, probably an hour tops.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I did want to. So I just want to make sure kind of prioritize questions. Um, so I think this. I'm going to take a step back from some of the uh, platform questions because this is something that comes up a lot, and a lot of times this is just you hear this canard anytime somebody under the age of 60 is running. Well, I don't know if they have enough experience. But there's something to be said. I think voters are interested in like, okay, where are you coming from this campaign? What are you bringing to the table? So I'm kind of curious if kind of give you an opportunity to tell our listeners kind of your experience. You did a little bit talking about what you did in DC, but maybe just like your experience as a community member in Battle Creek, any experience you've had, community organizing or involvement in politics that's relevant to this race and your aim to replace Bill Huizenga.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my call to action back in 2008 when a guy from Chicago came to Bailey Park in Battle Creek and let us know he was running for president. saw him then become president, and I got involved. You started working with the Battle Creek Community Foundation as a youth grant maker. Continued that work in college when I went to Michigan State. It was called the League Michigan. It was a group of statewide youth lawmakers helping to ensure that resources got into schools, focus on service learning, community service. That helped me understand how the nonprofit sector then interacted with government work, with the government work, and how policy then could be rolled out in communities in a beautiful way. I, that sort of opened my eyes, and as I was at Michigan State, got to work with statewide coalitions at Truscott Rossman, in a PR capacity. But that then set me up into my career into uh, actual field organizing. So first political campaign experience, Hillary Clinton. I was working in the battleground district in the second district of Maine. Uh, Worked on Hillary Skolton's a couple of her campaigns. In 2020, was a Battle Creek organizer, and in 2022, when districts redistricted, and her third district then became pretty much just Grand Rapids. I then became a super volunteer and organized under the campaign again, and then worked on my old boss, Sherrod Brown's campaign in 2024. So I come into this with a decade of field experience, campaign experience. Uh, in this race, I'm the only candidate in this race who has experience on Capitol Hill introducing legislation, passing legislation, ensuring that federal investments reach communities back home. Only person in this race with that experience. But most of all, I have lived experience being born and raised from this community. Born and raised from Battle Creek, product of Battle Creek Public Schools, member of the Nottawassippi Heron Band of the Potawatomi. Our people have been here for a very long time. I was born on into a Section 8 apartment, $30 monthly disposable income. Remember mom's WIC payments, the only time we could get name brand cereal at the top of the month. Remember red and or purple and red money, aka food stamps. I come with that lived experience too, and believe that that experience is what we lack so dearly in Washington. So I want to ensure that voters like me across this district go heard. Not just that story, but ensuring that everyone's story goes heard. I know that folks are pissed off with folks on the left, the right, conservative, progressive, Democrat, Republican. They just want people that know what they're going through and are going to fight for that. And so that's why I'm running, not to for some vanity project, not to boost my career, but to ensure that people in this district have somebody fighting for them.
All right, I have a follow-up question to that, and you mentioned, some of your campaign experience, and this is not like a gotcha or anything, but I am curious, and I think a lot of our listeners would be too. You mentioned, working on the Hillary Clinton campaign, and all these like again, a lot of I'm kind of curious, like how did your politics develop? Because I know like done 10 years ago, that was kind of seen as like it was a very this is like the old school 90s neoliberalism versus this more kind of progressive democratic socialist vision. And a lot of people have come from there to there since then. But I'm kind of curious if you could maybe talk a little bit about like how did you develop from that campaign 10 years ago to where you're at now, where your politics are maybe more on the kind of populist, economically progressive end.
Right. So even before then, the Obama days, I saw him as the hope, the change guy. And sort of my lived legacy of the Obama family was really, free school lunches. It wasn't until, I got out of college and into my adult years when I realized like, oh, he was doing a lot with drones.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I hop on Hillary Clinton's campaign. And yeah, I will admit I was a Sanders supporter when I was, in the 2016 primary at least.
Okay, all right.
And then as I'm looking for gainful employment, I had the chance to work on a presidential campaign, and at the same time, yeah, a huge opportunity, fighting back a huge threat. I felt like if me, this able-bodied human who was able to do something against Trump at that time, I felt like I needed to be in a campaign and fight directly in that sense. Um, did we come out of that fight successful? No. But did I do all I could to fight against him at that time? Yes. And I remained engaged. the start of my political career uh, began as Trump entered office. I moved to DC that same year, 2017, and so I'm I've sort of come up with the bruises of fighting back against the dirtiest of this swamp. I saw the West Wing version of politics in Michigan during the Obama days, but then understood what Washington and what the swamp really looks like post 2017.
Oh wow.
So,
Okay. Lawrence, go
so
ahead.
to so to be clear, you're saying that you always rocked with progressive politics, but you took a paycheck from centrist because you needed a job. Is that the synopsis that I'm that you're saying?
Well, you said it. I didn't say
All
that.
right. Well,
I will be a little bit more fair. I think like it's, that's true. But it's also, a lot of this is we're pushing pushing a rock up a hill over a very long period of time. And I think 10 years ago people could imagine somebody like Zoran Mamdani becoming like mayor of New York. And, even Biden. I think a lot of what gets forgotten in the narrative of 2020. That was a very disappointing result, but Biden was forced to adopt a lot of those progressive policies in his platform because the message had been sent like you can't ignore this. And the good things we did get out of the Biden administration were largely from kind of the progressive brain trust. So, yeah. Lawrence,
I,
I think the next question's in your court.
yeah, yeah. Well, two things. I'm laughing at okay. I have to push back a little bit.
Oh, Lawrence, are you there?
Yeah, hello, can you hear
Oh,
me?
yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you. Sorry, we blipped out for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back to. I want to come back to you and your previous affiliations with the liberal and centrist of the party. I'm going to come back to that in a minute,
Hmm.
but that does bring up a question that I we need answers to.
Hmm.
Um, the DNC autopsy just came out, and we've seen that it was full of AI. It was full of garbage. Just straight dumpster juice, and it did not bring up some of the key reasons why VP Harris lost to um, President Joffrey. And one of those main reasons was Gaza. 20% of our base did not come out and vote for Harris because of Gaza and because of the foreign policy that we have of funding countries that are actively committing genocide, not just Israel and what they're doing in Gaza, but also Saudi Arabia and what they're doing in Yemen and things of that nature. We need to know. I need to know personally if we are going to support you, your stance on the current situation of what's going on in our foreign policy and how you would tackle that if you were in Congress.
Yeah. Free Palestine, free Gaza. I'm not taking any APAC money, won't take APAC money. So, they won't ever steer my decision making. So I'll do whatever it takes to end the genocide and to fight for that two-state solution. It seems very far off right now, but that doesn't mean that we need to give up that dream. So when I was in Congress, I worked for Sherrod Brown as a congressional staffer, and I was a foreign policy staffer for a member who did not vote for a ceasefire at that time. But that didn't mean that I wasn't pushing the senator, our team, in ways that could be productive in down the road. For example, uh, President Barack Obama signed the United States on to a 12-year memorandum of understanding in MOU, ensuring we were going to be spending billions of dollars annually um, to in spending that in relation to Israel's defense. That's before any of the supplemental spending. So while I was in Congress, I noticed that almost a wide swath of members of Congress would send in letters every year requesting this money. And while I wasn't able to get Senator Brown to vote for a ceasefire, I was able to get his name off of that MOU to eventually give us some leverage down the road so that when the MOU is up, we can just let it lapse out and in that term of agreement. So when I was a congressional staffer, I was able to see push points like that, like the Leahy Law as a part of the Foreign Assistance Act. We have laws in the books right now. If we were to invoke them, we could shut off arms deals. So I want to ensure that not only Israel, someone that has evidence of committing war crimes, proceeding with ethnic cleansing and a genocide, we can end arms transfers to Israel and other states that we're, you know, conducting trades with. So not only can we end genocide abroad, we can then ensure that those resources are spent on us here domestically. We're looking at the price of a Tomahawk missile being $2 to $4 million. Well, why don't we just take one of those and then spend that on a community health center that we're seeing being closed, maybe in Arkansas? We take another missile, we can ensure that a school down the street doesn't go closed. So let's ensure that our money's being spent back home and we can do it through seeking justice abroad.
Speaking of justice abroad, and this is kind of a follow-up, and something that we were talking about. I was talking with Lawrence about this before he got here, and I was actually talking about this with my wife on the ride up to the studio. One thing, me and Lawrence, we've had this show for about 10 years, and it's very fascinating to see the way the public opinion is caught up on Palestinian liberation, especially just in the last couple of years. But something that we've seen a lot more, yeah, something we've seen a lot more silence on, and something that's been going on for just about as long, is the embargo on the people of Cuba that the Trump administration in recent months has ratcheted up. We are literally starving out the people of Cuba. I wanted to ask you, how would you approach this in Congress, and really, particularly, we've seen a lot of, even a lot of people who are being kind of forced to come around on Palestine are still very quiet on what the Trump administration is doing. Do you support lifting the embargo on Cuba, and how do you feel about this most recent ratcheting up of oppression onto the Cuban people?
Right. And when politicians say things like this, I usually don't believe them. But just this past weekend, I was reading some old John F. Kennedy speeches regarding peace. And I believe one part of the calculation that we forget about is our own actions in creating that environment for peace to be achievable. It's not just the perceived aggressor, it's us as the United States. So we must consider and actively be a part of deproliferation efforts. As much as we need Cuba to get in line with what we want, we must get in line with the rest of the world wants. And so at a certain point, we got to realize that sanctions does no one any good. We're hurting more folks than we're helping. So with Cuba, I would look at lifting sanctions, would look at ending the embargo. We were able to achieve this status not too long ago and normalize relations and open an embassy that's still open here on our side. We were able to achieve that. So why not continue in that direction? And let's not end it with Cuba, population that's near and dear to Southwest Michigan, Myanmar, our Burmese community. Uh, we we understand that the nation has experienced a military junta, but the sanctions right now are hurting more people than they're helping. So let's get back to the table. Let's practice some good old fashioned diplomacy if we can, and if we need to arrange the political chairs after this November, then let's do that. But we need to be serious. We need to look at what we're doing, look at what's working, really look at what's not working, and flip the status quo and do something different.
Lawrence, I think you said you had a couple follow-ups, or
Yeah, I have a few. I know that is the Democratic. I know it's the DNC's standard policy to say two-state solution on Gaza. But I would have I want to push back a little bit because I need to ask, how would that two-state solution be feasible? You have multiple. There's been multiple stories that have come out that we've covered of settlers now actively not just taking Gaza rebuilding and taking this land in Gaza. Um, there's a story that we did last week of a synagogue in New York literally selling Palestinian land after they bombed it. Um, how in your eyes would that two-state work when there's already a one state now? Israel is a state, but Israel and the United States continues to block Palestine from being a state with equal rights. So how would you, or how do you advocate and fight for that?
Well, I think first off, we need to ensure that there's an even bargaining table. And right now, when we have the Palestinian effort on one end, and on the other end, we have Israel backed up by the global powers, that doesn't set up for fair negotiations. So I say let's have two actors be able to negotiate backed by the global community, and let's not put weight on any one side. So I think that entails reeling back foreign assistance of all kinds. Israel should be able to support itself. And how those negotiations look, what that final plan is going to look like, I'm not even going to pretend to act like I know the beginning of the answer, sitting here in Kalamazoo. But I would hope it looks something like what we were gonna achieve in 1995. If we could get back to 1961, let's do that too. But we had a proposal which the global community rallied behind, and actually was agreed to at one point. I think that's a great starting point, but beyond that, um, I can't tell you that I
Mm.
have that final answer here today.
I, I mean, I'm partial to the 64 border, but that's me
Or 64,
personally.
sorry.
Yeah, no, no, that's cool. That's me. Um, Also, needing just like in America, uh, the colonized and the colonizers are going to have to live in peace together. But the process of dealing with disputes will need to be fair. Um, like the policy that Israel just passed about executing prisoners that they have is not okay. Like they
Right.
wouldn't, I personally would not advocate for supporting the Israeli state if they are continuing to pass policies like that that will disproportionately negatively affect Palestine in very similar ways that we've had in this country when we were going through Jim Crow. So, but that's me personally.
Well, and I,
Um,
I believe that we should treat Israel as the global pride is acting itself to be. And that's financial assistance, that's political cover, that's military, so it all needs to be cut off. And I believe we can start there. You bring up colonization, and as an indigenous America, colonization, land seizures, intergenerational trauma, are all things that our people also face. And believe that we need to show solidarity in this moment. If they're willing to do a certain action to other people, they're willing to do it to us as well, and vice versa. So we need to fight for others, fight against injustice anywhere, because it's a threat to justice everywhere, and this is clear as day, of one way we all can step up.
Lawrence, did you have another follow-up, or was it the do I have the potato now? I kind of lost track of it.
I have I have one quick hit. I have one quick hit because I done some. I did a little bit of research on you before you got here. And there's one policy. There's only one policy that I do have issue with you, and I wanted to hash that out just real quick. Um,
Let's do
I
it.
see that you're for. I see that you're for. Your education policy is pretty good, right? You want universal pre-K. You want to fund. You want to put more funding in K through 12. You only want to have universal college for 2 years. So I'm assuming when you put that on your website that that's community colleges. Why not fight for the similar policy that we brought up Bernie, uh, uh, universal free college for 4 years in instead of two, because on your website it says you want universal free college for 2 years and not four. So I was just wondering, why do you make that distinction?
Well, I'm going towards where the priorities are right now. We need to get, more skilled trades folks out there working right now. And if we can do that through, for educational, career technical training, community college, 2 year, then let's do that first. If we can then expand onto 4 year, hell, if we can include masters down the road, then let's do that. I think that that 2 year would be a great start. Would open up the imagination for folks to even pursue higher education. And build a foundation for us to build back our research backbone.
Okay. The only reason why I'm hesitant when I hear you say that, it reminds me of Mallory McMorrow and the other woman that's running against Abdul Sayed,
Mhm.
when they talk about trying to do a public option instead of Medicare for all. I kind of get that same vibe. I'm not gonna lie to you,
Yeah,
and I don't like it. And,
I,
the reason why I push back
I
is
hear you.
because uh, if I remember correctly, Bernie's policy for universal 4 year college was like $40 billion, right? We spent 40 to 80 billion in the first 2 weeks of the war with Iran.
Mhm.
So it's not like we don't have the money to do 4 year college.
There is money in the banana stand, so to speak.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I like, for you, I'm like, uh why are you fighting for a half loaf when we clearly see we have money for the full thing?
We've got money for a whole ton of things, and we can have a whole another couple hours on this. But I want to achieve what we can get. So when I talk to folks in Southwest Michigan, and it's hard for me to have this conversation in a D1 university, but a lot of folks outside of or who didn't attend Western Michigan, if you say 4 years, that codes is, Michigan, University of Michigan or Michigan State, folks who don't believe that that's achievable for them. Not to say that this is going to cap off anyone's dreams, but if you speak in a language that is more resonant to folks, that then makes that product more achievable and more folks to be willing and support it. I'm someone that went to Michigan State, went for that 4 year degree, um, but there are a lot of other folks who aren't pursuing that path. And as we're looking at the data, less people are going to be doing that. So I say let's start with the 2 year and expand from there.
All right.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, sorry, Lawrence.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All
We
right.
we can keep going back and forth on it, but we have more questions we gotta get to.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I wanted to pivot a little bit to climate change. So this is, local, global, question all in one because, obviously we've seen the impacts of it right here in Kalamazoo. Extreme flooding events have become more prevalent over the last several summers. We saw some devastating tornadoes down in Three Rivers and right out in Portage, just a couple summers ago. And what we're increasingly seeing is that the federal government is not keeping up with the capacity for relief that is necessary to deal with these kinds of events. So, climate change is here. Um, And I think a lot of discussion has been had around legislative solutions um, on the fossil fuel production end, which obviously America is kind of unique. We have a whole political party dedicated to denying climate science, and we're not going to. My listeners, our listeners have heard about all this ad nauseum. But I did want to ask, especially, I think Michigan has some unique issues when it comes to climate change. A couple of those are, again, kind of dealing with that excessive flooding and how to mitigate that, as well as a lot of climate scientists have projected Michigan is going to be something of a climate Goldilocks zone, especially by the end of the century. So we're looking at a much bigger Michigan, populous Michigan, in a couple of decades than we have now. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do we mitigate Michigan for dealing with the increase in these severe weather events, and also how do we prepare Michigan for what I think is going to be we're going to have like a lot of people, climate refugees coming up here once some of the like really sharp effects of climate change start to hit.
So I think first off, we need to change the way we talk about climate change. First off, there's no longer a question. Climate is changing due to human activity. So now that we've got that, settled, when we talk about climate change and we talk about the stormy clouds, literally depresses folks from wanting to take action on this topic. And so I say, let's reframe how we have the discussion. Let's put people to work. Let's put money in pockets. Let's ensure communities can thrive. And so, as a member of Congress, I want to ensure that the research firms that we have here throughout Southwest Michigan have investments to develop that technology. The production facilities have the money to then install and roll out the next generation of green energy production. If we are concerned with our failing, energy infrastructure, when it snows, our harder winds that are coming through, they're blowing our power lines down. Well, how about we engage in a national public works program where we then bury power lines to ensure that we have more resilient energy. Let's look at the things that we need to weather the coming storms, and let's put people to work right now to get those things done. We can create healthier communities. We can strengthen our research backbone from K through 12 all the way through postgrad, doing this and ensure people have money in their pockets for their next generations and ensure that people can live their fullest lives.
And I really do want to follow up on the other piece to that because it's going to be Michigan, but it's also this the whole Midwest corridor near the Great Lakes. And one of the things that we've talked about on the show is there's one of two approaches when it comes to late a few years from now where people are really starting to look at the Great Lakes area, and we can either like really become like embrace people coming in or turn into like Fortress Michigan. And there's a lot of moneyed interests. Even here in Kalamazoo, where I think want it to be one particular way. But I think like particularly thinking about how can we, and again, this is assuming we're not trying to just unseat fascists. Let's say we're in a world where we have like maybe there's more like social democrats, democratic socialists in office. How do we rally the resources of these kind of Midwest Great Lakes states to kind of bolster ourselves for what's to come?
Yeah, that's a uh, tough framing. I would say, yeah, and we're looking at this globally as well. If we're looking at the large, I'll get back to us here in Michigan, I promise. If we're looking at, us as a global phenomenon, we're witnessing the largest human migratory event in global history. We've got a lot of people moving all at once. So this isn't just something that America is experiencing. So we need to work with our partners around the globe to ensure that folks can have healthy resting spots. If folks are coming from Venezuela, can they maybe have a home to stay in Colombia, things of that nature. So bringing it back home, uh, how can we ensure that if we're looking at, just a news report yesterday, scientists saying that folks need to evacuate New Orleans right now. We're going to see other southern states, Wilmington, North Carolina. How long before we see that announcement from Miami? Folks starting to move north. Well, you don't need to necessarily move all the way from Florida to Michigan. What can we do in Oklahoma to ensure that they can receive folks? But as we're looking at Michigan, can we get our housing production in a hyperdrive? We're already facing a housing crisis. If more folks are going to come up our way, how can we be extra ready when that wave is coming? And we can do that work starting right now. It's not as if we don't have enough workers, we don't have enough resources. We just need to ensure that those investments are going in the right places so that those jobs can be completed. We're going to need to ensure that we have folks in social services employed, language translation. We need to ensure that folks have job training, driver's training, just community relations as folks are integrated in new communities from abroad as well as from other states. So there's going to be a whole host of resources that we need to be ready for that moment. We have good roadmaps to look at. We have places like Springfield, Ohio, and other communities throughout the Midwest that have influx of new community members, the pain points that they felt, and then what they did to relieve those aches. So it's not as if the coming challenges are impossible, but we need to do that work right now. We're probably not with this current administration in Congress, but after this next election, we can really get some momentum going in that front.
All right. Lawrence, I'm going to toss it to you.
Uh, I think I covered most of the questions that I've
Oh,
had for you.
okay.
And also like I know me and you talked about maybe doing an hour,
Yeah, I think I've got like two. I've really
so
only got
we
like
got
two
other topics
questions
that we want
left.
to talk about.
So,
But
yeah.
I'm yeah. Go
All
ahead
right.
and your best.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, kind of just like the last couple things. I've got one more very like specific issue question, and then something a little bit broader to close out with. But housing is one of the big things. Me and Lawrence been doing this show for a long time. I've ran for office before here at the city commission level, and one of the things that I heard the most, the number one thing when I was out knocking on doors, affordable housing, affordable housing. That was a huge issue. I know you talk a little bit about on your campaign website, but I wanted to kind of really, give a chance to dig down on the affordability crisis, both with home ownership, which we see a lot of corporations monopolizing, hoarding the housing stock. And we also, is another effect of that, we see, renters, tenants, having very little control over, rent spikes, as well as, their own living conditions. So what could you do as a congressperson, to try to, again, make home ownership more attainable, as well as, making it, fairer and easier for tenants, to live in comfortable conditions and organize for those conditions.
Well, first off, we need to pass a rate payer or a rent payer's bill of rights, and that can be passed right away, instituted nationally. Right now, we have a bipartisan open window to be able to pass things like that. We just saw last week, the House passed, the Senate passed housing bill. Now, is it the most perfect piece of legislation? No, but it shows us that we have enough lawmakers that are serious enough to take this issue head on, and we can continue on that momentum. So, but we need folks in Congress that understand that there are more folks who rent than own. right now we have members of Congress that are of the previous generations who just don't understand that reality. And so me as someone who has rented before and now owns a home, I want to use that experience and again understanding that a first time home buyer probably is not going for the single family, two adults, two kids, dog sort of household. So we need to build a wide range of housing. Yeah, we need to build more market rate. We need to build affordable housing, but can we build condos so that folks have an entry point into the housing market so that they can then level up into that next property that they want to own, so that they can actually achieve the American dream, which seems very distant, if not impossible for a lot of folks. But a way that I believe that we can drive housing down for a lot of folks who aren't necessarily looking to own a home, I think is through repurposing our existing infrastructure. So in downtown Kalamazoo, just look at the vacant office spaces. But throughout Kalamazoo County, there actually is a larger initiative to infill the county rather than spread out with housing units. So with that authority, we can then reutilize some of our brown spaces and just empty properties. And what I'm thinking about is I'm looking at the example of Van Buren County. They took a old Posh and revamped it and turned it into a senior center that has nurse station prescriptions on site. They have 3 meals a day provided, theater, computer lab, pickleball courts, you name it, whatever a senior citizen might want and need nowadays. They have a facility that's able to provide that for their community members using an old Felposh. And so I want to bring federal investments to our communities to be able to recreate that with vacant office buildings. Why can't we have, a 6 floor tower with the top 5 floors, the different offices? Why can't those be apartments for veterans? In the bottom first floor, why can't that be, sort of substance abuse counseling, employment services, mental health resources? Why can't we turn these things that our community has into things our community actually needs? And those are things that I don't think members of Congress are talking about. But we got people that are willing to take this issue on. And so I want to do my little piece to bring this up into the national conversation.
Okay, great. I really liked a lot of what you were saying there, especially like, we talked a lot about like, there's so much housing stock, especially here in Kalamazoo. I think there's like something like 5 empty houses for every houseless person in Kalamazoo. That number may have fluctuated since I looked it up a couple years ago. Lawrence, you have a follow-up.
No, I do have a question. This is more of a strategy, more of a strategy question, and I am happy about us talking about housing. I know that Andy's been big on tenants' rights and tenants unions and things of that nature. Is there and we've seen uh you know in other states about policies like freezing rent, right, and things of that nature. Are some of those policies or some of those ideas um things that you have on your table when you're talking about like a housing initiative here in Michigan? And if so, how would you implement some of those policies?
I know specifically, just to tail on that, I know rent control is currently banned here in the state of Michigan, and there's also a federal kind of ban on rent control. So that's something you'd fight for, kind of in addition to Lawrence's question.
Yeah, and fighting against that ban would be on the table. The one caveat is that I would be operating from a federal level. And so while you could put a cap at whatever X amount, you're just working with, 50 states in territory. So um, I can't necessarily commit to a certain dollar amount, but fighting against those bans, ensuring that, you can't raise rates beyond folks' means to make those ends meet, that would be something I'd be for to ensure that renters, property owners and regular everyday people have more of a voice, have more power to ensure that they have a place to live.
All right. So I'm kind of just at my last question, and then we'll
I,
let you
I
go
do have
and
a quick
take.
follow up before we
Oh,
let
oh,
you
okay.
go.
Go ahead. Yeah,
This
yeah.
is more so so just from a campaign standpoint, um, because I feel like I'm comfortable calling you a progressive, and a lot of the policies that you talk about, you definitely have advocated for more progressive democratic socialist ideals, right? But are you see uh have you been seeking or trying to get endorsements um in this campaign from progressive groups like Leaders We Deserve, um, you know, say I think our revolution is still operating. Hello, somebody with Nina Turner. You said you was in Ohio, so I'm assuming that you know former Senator Nina Turner and her organization. Are there any of those um, uh, Justice Democrats? Are there any of those organizations that you have reached out to or tried to get your endorsement so that it's not that you just have the rhetoric of a progressive, but you are stamped by other progressive groups.
That actually was going to be like part of my last question. So you took the words out of my mouth.
Well, we've received the endorsement of the Michigan Democratic Party's Progressive Caucus. That shouldn't make things clear. We just announced the People's Coalition here in Michigan. Is endorsing our campaign. We'll be a part of their People Power Tour this summer. Um, we're endorsed by End Citizens United. Obviously, to End Citizens United decision, their Unrig Washington program. We're endorsed by Citizens Impeachment, a crop of lawmakers who are going to support filing articles of impeachment on day one. Uh, you know, so we're being endorsed, supported by national progressive organizations as well as embedded ride or die community members. Folks who our are operating outside of the traditional political methods or scales somewhat like progressives and are getting elected. And so in my race, we are, yes, I would be considered progressive, but I'm not necessarily walking around with that label because folks are just done with politics, political labels. They want to know that I'm not taking any corporate PAC money, and if that reads as progressive, then hell, then that's what I am. But folks know that uh, the things that a progressive usually is fighting for it are the things that people want. Universal health care. This is a 60-40 issue. Is that considered progressive? Well, that seems pretty pragmatic to me. Getting corporate money out of politics, that's like a 75% issue. Ensuring that our money isn't going to Israel's genocide abroad, that's a 60 plus issue. So you call me a progressive, but I think it's pretty pragmatic, the things I'm fighting for.
It's almost as if progressive ideas are popular. Wow, who would have
Almost
thought?
so.
Yeah. I had just quick follow-up question because Lawrence asked like the big chunk of it, but just kind of out of that, what kinds of figures and really more importantly, or organizations in the political arena are you kind of taking notes from in terms of developing your policy platform?
Yeah, so an organization I was supported by early on was Advanced Native Political Leadership, and that is sort of what gave me my Bible, my campaign journal, my blueprint, really, how I was going to be able to form a people power campaign that was rooted in my indigeneity. So ensuring that my campaign was going to be uniquely of this district, not just playing into identity politics, but tapping into who we are as Michigan's fourth congressional. Oath of office and other organizations supported me, not only ensures that their candidates are going to be transparent and open, but they provided us with technical assistance, provided me with my first financial director. I'm looking at, other candidates who have run, like Kat Ebegazela. I'm looking at folks who are continuing to run, like, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, folks who are in Congress like Maxwell Frost. I'm looking at New Jersey's 11th, another race that's looking similar to mine. And I'm looking at the races of the past. I'm looking at New York's third in 2018, a bartender who went up against the fourth most powerful Democrat, and I'm relating that to what I'm doing here. So, a lot of good orgs, a lot of good members to look at. But at the end of the day, I think we're building something here that folks are going to be looking at post the election.
All right, yeah, thanks, and I appreciate, our show. It's all about we want to deep dive into stuff, so thank you for your time. Lawrence, did you have any last questions or bits before we wrap it up?
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay. Well, Diop, thank you so much for taking time. I know how busy campaign season can be. If our listeners are more interested in finding out more about you, your campaign, how would they do that?
Yeah, if you want to learn more, you can go to Diop4MI, that's DIOP 4, the number, MI.com to learn more about the movement we're building in Southwest Michigan, how you might be able to tap in and support and learn about our socials as well. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for listeners for y'all supporting this station and for the work y'all doing elsewhere.
All right. Best of luck to your race, and we'll see you out there. What is the primary date? Is August
August 4th. Make
4th.
sure
Yeah.
make sure you are registered. Make your plan to vote right now. Absentee ballots drop on June 25th, so make your plan to vote.
All right, everybody. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR. You can also find us online at on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. You can find on most podcasting apps. We're going to take a quick little break. Don't touch that dial. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution.